Before we do, we've got another check of the weather from Mr. Roker. Al, it is such a pretty morning, isn't it?
Perfect. A second airplane!
Your life is going to change, but more important, your son's life is going to change forever. America will never be the same after September 11th, 2001.
He's on almost everyone's list of the most likely suspects for today's attacks.
The alleged mastermind, America's most wanted terrorist, Osama bin Laden.
He has described the United States as the devil. This is the beast.
Meanwhile, Osama bin Laden is a name that we have been hearing all day long.
They now believe that bin Laden was responsible.
I'm told that Osama bin Laden likely deployed more than 50 terrorists.
They are now, and I'm quoting here, 90% certain.
Somebody provided the logistical support for this operation, and clearly the only person.
Bin Laden comes to mind right away, Mr. Brimmer.
Indeed, he certainly does. Bin Laden.
This is his M.O.
We have to look to the Middle East. We have to look to Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden.
Bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden.
Within hours of the attacks on the Trade Center, there seemed to be one suspect, billionaire terrorist Osama bin Laden, and his band of ragtag extremists Al-Qaeda were to blame. Did you know the FBI does not list 9/11 as one of bin Laden's crimes? Why not? According to Rex Toom, chief of investigative publicity for the FBI, it is because there is no hard evidence linking bin Laden to the attacks. If that is the case, how could the 9/11 Commission conclude it was the work of 19 radical Muslims from the Middle East, under the direction of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Osama bin Laden? Bin Laden has been universally blamed for 9/11, but if one takes a closer look at the available evidence, it points to a much darker power. On September 15, 2001, Newsweek reported that U.S. military sources have given information that suggests 5 of the alleged hijackers received training at secure U.S. military installations in the 90s. Saeed Al-Ghamdi, Ahmed Al-Nami, and Ahmed Al-Ghamdi listed their address on driver's licenses and car registrations as the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. Another indication of how the hijackers were tied to U.S. bases was reported on September 12th by Fox in D.C. They stated, congratulatory phone calls were made from a separate aeronautical school in Florida, which suggests inside help for the hijackers.
Now, here at Embry-Riddle School in Daytona Beach, investigators say that they did indeed intercept cell phone calls that originated out of here, calls that were congratulatory after yesterday's attacks, calls the feds say were made by terrorist sympathizers here in Daytona as well as in Broward County.
The New York Times would report that the Defense Department said that Atta had gone to the International Officer School at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, Abdul Aziz Al-Amari to the Aerospace Medical School at Brooks Air Force Base in Texas, and Saeed Al-Ghamdi to the Defense Language Institute at the Presidio in Monterey, California.
Now, you might think that some of the neighbors would be shocked to find out that a suspected terrorist lived right down the street from them, but at least one woman we spoke with was not surprised at all.
Diane Albritton was so concerned about what was happening inside the home at 502 Orange Street, she called the CIA. Why was she suspicious?
The odd coming and going, the different rental cars, the odd-looking people that came and went.
At that time, she says, the agency was not interested.
John O'Neill was the FBI counter-terror chief responsible for the investigation into Osama bin Laden. On August 22, 2001, after claims of repeated obstruction of his investigations into Saudi funding, O'Neill left the FBI.
This document is marked secret and WF, which means it walked its way out of the Washington Bureau of the FBI. It indicates that before the attack of September 11th, agents had wanted to question 2 members of a very powerful family for their connections to a suspected terrorist organization.
What did John O'Neill do before he worked in the World Trade Center?
John was the FBI.
Head of the FBI.
He was tracking down fucking
Osama.
He
was tracking down Osama.
Because the government didn't listen to him. The government didn't listen to him. The FBI. Hold on. We want to call a car to car. The FBI fucked up. They knew about the flight training.
Yes.
That was a fuck up for having these people in our country. We all agree on something. And the important thing is have to understand, I feel what you feel. I've lost friends there. I feel what you feel. That was our World Trade Center. That was our people that fucking died that day.
At a time when bin Laden was the most wanted man in the world, why would intelligence agencies stop their own investigations, especially as they were closing in on him?
If you didn't hear me, I went specifically. I called the Attorney General's office just days after 9/11. I said, Dave Shippers and I represent a special agent of the FBI Chicago field office who has years of information about how the FBI did not do its job, did not in any way investigate in a meaningful way money laundering in the United States. You're now claiming you want to do this. I'd like to make them available to you, Attorney General Ashcroft. And I was met with a response by Michael Chertoff, head of the criminal division. We're tired of conspiracy theories.
Michael Chertoff will later become the head of Homeland Security, the department set up to fight the war on terror after 9/11. Wright was also restricted from telling any specifics about their investigation. Robert Wright was then prevented from working on terror investigations. So what happened to Wright?
He was demoted in and around the time period leading up to 9/11. He's working on innocuous, meaningless things. That's what he's doing. Yes. He's a paper pusher. It's because these monies were going through some very powerful U.S. banks with some very powerful interests in the United States. These banks knew or had reason to know that these monies were significant potential conflicts of interest in both the Clinton and Bush administration, and in particular this Bush administration, who is as tight with Saudi Arabia as you can get. The president's father used to stay with the bin Laden family when he would go to Saudi Arabia.
Former President Bush spent the night in D.C. at the White House on September 10th.
We've also learned at NBC that there was a president